You never know when you're going to get an exciting football game. We thought we were getting one last night, and it was, but it wasn't because, usually, Devin, the turning point isn't in the first half of the game. It's usually fourth quarter. I felt like the turning point was when John Harbaugh decided to almost pull a Barry Switzer, going for it deep in his own end. Once they converted that and finished the drive, I felt like they had the Chargers on their heels and on the ropes the rest of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it was a gutsy call. And, I saw Lisa Salters ask him at one point, and he was like, man, how far back were we at our 10-yard line? Like, I think he understood the flow of the game of, hey, we got this offense that we should pick up, a half a yard easily, and they go for it. And that's the thing we always talk about when we're sitting in there watching the games, and it's just like, kick the field goal or punt the ball. Like, don't do. And this is the opposite side of when you call something like this and you get it, what it can do to a team. I think for the Chargers, that defense they were fighting, they were playing tough. And I think once they gave this up, it was a kind of like, damn, like this is who they are. This is the kind of bully mentality. They go get a half a yard. And then I felt like it got Baltimore going. They were able to run the ball a little bit more. They were able to pick up some yards on the ground with Henry. And I think that got their offense in a flow. And once their offense got in a flow, we've talked about it. I think this is the hardest type of game the Chargers are going to have to play with different teams. The back and forth of the other team scoring points, Chargers go down. Can they kind of get this offense going where Herbert can drop back and throw the ball? I think that's going to be their struggles. Not because Herbert can't do it. We saw Johnson had 3 drops. They weren't able to connect down the field as much as they would want to once Baltimore was able to put some points on the board.
Yeah, this goes back to this notion, and I think we've talked about this in the viewing room. Analytics has empowered coaches to do the unconventional under the guise of the numbers support it, / I'm just being aggressive. And the fact that analytics have stretched the rubber band, that allows coaches under this guise of I'm just being aggressive, not I'm just being stupid, to do something like go for it 4th and short on their own 16-yard line. And he even thought he was backed up all the way at the 10. Now, maybe he was just doing that for dramatic effect. But still, to do it inside your 20, I haven't seen the numbers. I have a feeling the numbers don't support. Although now there's a data point. You go for it 4th and 1 on your own 16, your win percentage goes up because they won the game. But it's once that Ravens off, and one of these days I'm going to learn not to pick against Lamar Jackson in prime time. One of these days I'm going to learn not to pick against John Harbaugh against Jim, because once they got going, they had punt to start the game, punt end of game on the back end. 9 total drives, the 5 in between, touchdown, field goal, touchdown. Once that offense gets going, it's unstoppable. And I thought last night the Chargers' total team effort would overcome it, but the defense, Zach Orr, with that Dean Pease influence that has kind of been behind the scenes, they brought him in as a consultant. I think that's finally starting to take root. Zach Orr is getting a little more comfortable, and maybe the defense, maybe last night is a game where the Ravens say, hey, you know what? Maybe we can avoid collapsing down the stretch and hold on and win one of these games and play good defense on the back end. It helps when the Chargers don't have a tremendous complement of receivers, but you got Justin Herbert. So it was a testament to the Ravens. Offense did what they always do. Defense didn't do what they usually do. They get the win.
Yeah, and I thought the Chargers didn't fully take advantage of the fast start. They drive down the field, they score a touchdown. Their defense is playing tough, and you look up, and it's a 10-point game. It's 10-0. And I thought that was, as I'm watching, and I've watched Baltimore a couple times, and they played Tampa. Tampa got out to a hot start. They get ahead, but it was still, I think it was a 10-point game. Baltimore comes storming back. You look at the Cincinnati game on a Thursday night. Cincinnati gets a good start. They play from ahead. Baltimore comes storming back. So you have to put all of the pressure in the world on this Baltimore team. If you can find any type of edge in the beginning of the game, It's not safe when it's a 10-point game. It's not really safe when it's a 13-point game because at any moment this offense could get going. And I agree with you, Floyd. I thought the defensive backfield, what they were able to do, I think they've settled things down a little bit. They've gone with Kyle Hamilton more in the true safety role in the back end. Probably like it looks more like the lead communicator. He's wearing the green dot. Because Roquan Smith was out last night, he was able, I think, to kind of just settle some things. This is what we're going to do. And I think one of the bright spots for them is Wiggins. Wiggins played well on the outside, covering people, being able to, in some of these key moments, third down, 2-minute drills of when they go at him, he's in good coverage. So when you're able to do that, then it buys time for the rush. Then teams can't always say, hey, we're going to chip a guy or do different things because we know we can get open with only 3 guys in the route. When you take that away, it forces teams to, hey, we got to get out. We got to get more guys in the route. We got to get guys open. Now you're able to run some games. Van Noy had a sack off a game. So it seems like they're finding exactly how they want to play. But it'll be interesting what happens because you play this game without Roquan Smith, your middle linebacker, who's been the glue. It looks pretty good. You play against a team that's not prolific passing the ball. How does that change up, or does it stay exactly the same when they put Roquan Smith back in that lineup?
By the way, I got to say this about Wiggins, because there's only so many fashion statements you can make in the National Football League without getting a fine letter. Brian Branch, the Lions safety, does the mouthpiece jammed into the hole in his helmet. I still can't believe they let him do it, but they do. Nate Wiggins and Shereen Williams texted the PFT thread last night during the game. Why do you have 2 mouthpieces and wear none of them? He wears none of them. It'd be different if one's just the extra accessory just to show. They're just both dangling there. 2 mouthpieces, none in his mouth. That's Nate Wiggins. But the Ravens' offense last night, we're used to a lot more from Lamar Jackson. He had a good night. He didn't have a Lamar Jackson night, 177 passing yards, 55 rushing yards. But the rushing attack, Derrick Henry, quietly 140. Think about that. In the same stadium, 255 one night from Saquon Barkley. The next night, 140 from Derrick Henry. You had the long run from Justice Hill for the touchdown. But 212 rushing yards allowed by the Chargers. First time Jim Harbaugh in the NFL. It's only his 5th NFL season. It feels like he's coached in the NFL longer than that. 5th NFL season, first time 200 rushing yards surrendered by Jim Harbaugh. I would not have expected that because I thought that defense, that's the strength of the team. That's what's transforming this team. And they got shredded last night on the ground.
I thought Baltimore finally committed to running the ball. Troy Aikman kept saying it on the broadcast. Hey, this Chargers defense, they run a lot of too high safeties, leaving the safeties in the deep part of the field, and they're very comfortable giving up some running yards, playing good red zone defense. They're okay with that, even though they're good against the run. If you hit a few, they're okay with that. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, Baltimore, no one can be okay with your run game getting a couple yards. It's not okay if Derrick Henry gets 6-7 yards a carry. And I thought they finally say, you know what? We don't have to try to set up the pass. We don't have to try to do things to get the ball thrown. We can just turn around and hand the ball off. And I thought Derrick Henry, again, at one point, he was at 7 yards a carry. Then Justice Hill breaks one. I'm like, that's the reason why you keep running the ball. That's the reason we saw the night before the Eagles, they keep running the ball with Saquon Barkley because at any moment, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 times a game, he can just be gone. And I thought the combination of what Baltimore has, yes, you have Lamar Jackson, yes, you have Derrick Henry, but you also have Justice Hill, you have Mitchell, you have these other guys who can run the ball and catch the ball, but they have a different level of speed when they get in the game. And I think that was the pressure that they were able to put on the Chargers. It was running the ball. And because when you play against Lamar and you have to now look in the game and say, hey, we have to go stop the run, we have to do that. For one, you still don't stop it because now they're in a groove and the offensive line is doing a good job. But now you have to actually think about, okay, how do we stop the pass once they get rolling? And I thought Baltimore finally said, you know what? We're just going to run the ball. And I thought that was the difference, kind of turning the game around after going for it on 4th down.
And even late in the game, when it felt like the Chargers could get the ball back, make things interesting, down 2 scores, I had picked 31-30 as the final, and I'm thinking, hey, it's going to happen. They're going to score 1 touchdown. They're going to get the next one, and Jim's going to be nutty enough to go for 2 and go for the win and walk off 31-30. But they just couldn't stop the rushing attack. Give me an idea what that does to the psychology of a defense when they just can't be slowed down. Is it mentally exhausting, physically exhausting, spiritually exhausting? Like every rep that they just keep gashing and gashing. I don't know that you've been in that situation much. You probably weren't in New England, but what does it do to the defense individually and collectively when you just can't stop the running game?
It's both. It's mentally and physically draining, especially when you play an offense that you know is going to run the ball. You know they have this prolific rushing attack. So you come in and all week you're hearing about the rushing attack and you're like, hey, we're going to stop the run. And then the game gets going and there's nothing you can do. And I've always said this as a player. Sometimes when nothing's working, you're like, we're not making the right calls or coach not doing this for us. And then you kind of realize like, hey, coach has run through his whole sheet, his whole call sheet. He's thrown everything we have out there and nothing seems to work. And I think one of the things that stuck out in this game was sometimes like this Chargers defense was getting them to the 3rd and shorts or 4th and short. And then they would just run the ball. They would run the ball to Derrick Henry or Lamar Jackson would squeak out another like 7 or 8 yards to get a first down. That is just so deflating because you're down and you know the only way to come back is you got to get a stop to get the ball back to your offense. But you also know this team has said, we're going to just keep running the ball. And when you can't stop a team from just turning around and handing the ball off for first downs, it feels like, hey, there's nothing we can do in this game that will have an impact and help us win. And once you get to that mode, there's nothing you could do as a defense. It's a long day. It's brutal. And the game's over pretty much from there.
And when it's happening like that and you can't stop the run no matter how hard you try, help folks understand how a play action pass ends up ripping your heart out in a setting like that after a fake handoff.
Yeah, for one of those things, once you can't stop the run, coaches are like, we got to be aggressive. We got to get more guys in the box. We got to blitz guys. So now as a defensive back, you're like, I'm on my own for the rest of the game. They're not going to have any zones, any help. And you know, once they drop back and it's play action, you know everybody else, usually it's 8 guys in the box, they're all going downhill. So once they all go into the line of scrimmage, pretty much the whole field is wide open. They can go deep. They could go in the middle. Like it's just so much field to cover for what might only be 3 guys left in your defensive backfield to try to stop the pass. So once you have run, play action, everything's open, that's an offensive coordinator's dream come true.
Also, and I think we might have talked about this earlier in the year after a Ravens game when Derrick Henry went off. Have you encountered him one-on-one out in space? And what do you do when you see that freight train off the rails coming right at you?
You almost try to, for one, you do whatever you can do, but it's okay if you get ran over slowly or you grab a limb and you hold on till help comes. I think one of the things Derrick Henry has continued to get better at, and everybody knows the stiff arm is so prolific. He stiff arms guys. But one of the things I think he's really good at is no matter which hand the ball is in, the ability to kind of slow his feet down and take that offhand and get it to where he needs to go. It's not always the kind of normal as you're running, ball in the outside hand, stiff arm back into the field. He just takes his offhand and wherever the defender seems to be coming from, he's trying to either push you away or he's almost at sometimes lifting you and throwing you to the side. Like that to me is what you see when you see Derrick Henry. And the worst part of playing him is when he's able to get straight through the line right to the secondary. So when the first guy going to tackle him is 180 pounds, 190 pounds, that to me is when you see some of these, elite, phenomenal runs that he's had is nobody from the defensive line or to the linebackers hits him and he's straight into the secondary. Now he's throwing these little guys around. Like these are junior high school kids that are basically looking like they're trying to tackle the varsity fullback. And Derrick Henry makes everybody look small once he gets into those situations.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.